Hey everybody, welcome to What Are You Doing in Denmark, the podcast where we talk to some of the coolest people in Denmark about what they're doing here. My name is Derek and I'm your host, joined by my co-host Mike.
That's right, and today we are excited to be joined by Adrian Mackinder. You are a comedian, author, actor, writer, producer, podcaster, and now you get to add to your list guest on Did. Welcome here.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. That is now the top of the list of things
perfect.
that I've done, is just being on this.
See? I mean, chronologically, but hopefully by the end of this, it'll be, it'll feel that way too.
Did alumnus.
Yes.
Yeah.
The top of all the tops.
Yes.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us. And one thing we like to do here on What Are You Doing in Denmark is make sure that you're going through the podcast, just like with life, it's nice to have a best friend and a BFF. We'll start with a little game, the BFF game, and Mike and I are going to ask you a series of questions.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
We've each provided an answer. You're just going to pick the one that feels the most right to you.
Okay.
Right.
And as soon as one of us has earned two correct answers from you, then we'll be BFFs, at least for the show. And then after this,
Okay.
Maybe in life.
Maybe
we'll
in life,
see. We'll
yeah.
see how this goes.
Does this mean that my treatment will go down in quality if I alienate the one of you that I don't pick?
I think hazing is a big part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Could be. But also it could make for an interesting show if you just suddenly bond with your BFF and just ignore the questions from the other one being like, who are you? Why are you? You can't sit with us.
Yeah, okay. I'm happy to do that.
Although be careful because we're going to do another version of the game at the end. So perhaps you could have two BFFs. So
that's fine.
Yeah, be
More the
careful.
merrier. I'm happy to do this. Let's see how it works.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the first question. We know that you are a history lover. We'll dig a lot more into that as we talk through. We also love history. We're nerds. I think it's three nerds sitting at the table. Perfectly fine.
I wonder what that smell was.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if your BFF could bring one historic figure out with us for a night, would you be more impressed if the BFF showed up with Guy Fawkes or Tsar Nicholas II?
Well, Guy Fawkes, without question.
Why Guy Fawkes?
Well, I mean, the gunpowder plot is integral to my history. It was fascinating. Someone famously said that Guy Fawkes was the last man to enter Parliament with honest intentions. Which I'm not saying I agree with that, because it's a weird one, bonfire night, because it's just a case of, are we celebrating that they almost succeeded, or are we celebrating that they failed? So the Protestants and the Catholics get the best of both worlds.
I like that. And there's fireworks. Everyone loves fireworks.
Exactly. And we got V for Vendetta out of it.
Exactly.
And my favourite
masks.
graphic novel, The Mask.
Exactly.
Him. And Tsar Nicholas II, he just failed his country, didn't he? Ended up getting horribly murdered.
Yes.
Well, they were both horribly murdered. But apparently Guy Fawkes, I love this, Guy Fawkes apparently, because he was about to be hung, because he's going to be hung, drawn and quartered, apparently he jumped from the scaffold so he would break his neck instantly. We got a bit dark very quickly here.
Wow.
Which means that he would be spared the pain and torture of being drawn and quartered. So he was also smart. He went, I'm just going to go out with a snap. And then that was it. So
I admire a little gusto, especially during your own execution.
That's exactly
right.
Showmanship.
Showmanship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Leave a legacy. Make it so people talk about you afterwards. And with that, you and I get 1 point together.
Oh, I feel this bond. Sorry.
It's this side of the table.
That's okay. That's fine.
Oh, sorry about Tsar Nicholas.
I just thought it would be nice to warn him, and I feel like he could probably hold his liquor. It'd be a fun night out.
Yeah,
I think,
that's true.
I mean,
Definitely.
all those kids, he's doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, there are merits.
But if you're half British, half Russian, it's... Yeah.
It was a weird thing because he was related to our king at the time of the First World War, and also related to Kaiser Wilhelm. They all had the same face.
Yes.
They had the same
that
face.
same kind of dour English face.
And at one point did the three of them just get in a room and go, we're all related.
Yes.
We all don't get on at Christmas, but do all these people have to die?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I feel like there was some commonality. I mean, I, sometimes would argue with my cousins growing up, but never, never on a World War scale.
It didn't lead to 20 million deaths.
Yeah. We'd play capture the flag, and sometimes, we'd get a little...
It's a little close to the bone.
But no trench warfare.
No, there's no Somme, is there?
No.
Off the back of the turkey not being cooked well enough.
Yes, exactly.
No.
But all right, let's see if I can maybe rebound here. So we think that BFF should be historically wise, but also easy to travel with. But sometimes they're not. So if you had to pick between two potential BFFs that had a travel fail in their past, would you be more apt to go along with the guy who one time in Montreal drunkenly fell through a glass coffee table, or once in Zimbabwe got held at the border due to a passport issue?
I would say I would expect everyone to have issues going through Zimbabwe security, because and I've read this, not my words, but I've read it. It's quite corrupt as a country. It's been rated a bit.
Yes.
So I would expect most people have a bit of trouble. I also celebrate anyone that can plough through furniture while intoxicated, and so it has to be falling through a coffee table in Montreal. If you can't do it in Montreal, where can you do it?
Exactly. That's 2 for 2 because that was me.
That was
Wow,
also
what
nice.
happened?
So, classic story. You go to Montreal for a friend's bachelor party, and
Well, in the U.S., that's very popular because you have to be 21 to drink in the U.S. But once you cross the Canadian
18
border,
over
it's
in
either
Canada?
18 or 19, depending on the province. Yeah.
especially I grew up not far from the Canadian border, so it was very common to have bachelor party. You have a younger brother or something
Sure.
along, so you can go up there and
Okay.
drink. And Montreal's fun.
Yeah.
So, but no, that was me.
Talented dancers.
Yes.
Yeah, I have family in Montreal.
Do you?
Yeah, I've never been myself, but I hear it's spectacular. I hear the furniture's excellent.
Well, it wasn't when you turn it
Dirty,
into sand, as I did. No, it was a classic case of like sharing a room with some friends and had to go to the bathroom. Didn't want to disturb everybody and hit the light. And instead, as I was feeling around the room, I went hand first
No way.
into the table.
Did you lacerate anything?
I still have a scar on my hand from where I did it. Also fun, kind of a preview for coming to Denmark. My first experience with socialized medicine. So I cut myself pretty bad and was like, I'm probably going to need stitches. So I go to the hospital, and I go there, and the guy cleans me up or whatever else. And then after that, you go to kind of the little like cashier stand to go give them your Medicare card,
Yeah.
the Canadian one. And I was like, nope, I don't have that. I'm not from there. And like, well, then it will cost you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I thought it was Canada. I thought healthcare was free. They're like, well, for Canadians.
But how much was it?
Ouch.
I don't even remember how much I didn't even. So I was cleaned out, and I was like, I'll go to CVS in the morning. I'll take care of it myself. So I just walked away.
What?
You're just putting some vodka on it. It's
Basically.
ethanol, it's alcohol. It's
How it
close
started,
enough.
how it ended, with a little bit of vodka on the hands.
Well, I cut the top of my finger off about 3 weeks ago whilst peeling a pumpkin.
Oh,
So I feel your pain, literally. But no, I have to go for that. I'm sorry about you.
Oh, no, that's okay.
But I should have said, what did you expect?
I had a couple extra days in Victoria Falls. It was nice. Yeah, there's this thing. When I first arrived to Denmark, I had the smaller U.S. passport. There's one with 25 pages, and then there's one with 50 pages, I believe. And I had the smaller one. And if you live abroad, they automatically give you the larger book now. But at the time, I didn't have that, and it was it was rather full, and I didn't have time because of some travels I had before this trip to go and get a new passport. But I thought, okay, I have enough pages in there. I guess South Africa has this rule that you need to have 2 consecutive blank pages in order to be admitted to the country.
Why?
I don't know. It's just this like arcane rule that they have.
Is that so if they want to backstamp stuff with some paid-for trips that didn't exist because it's
could
putting
be.
money in a brown envelope to give to an official, you have the space.
And look, that's exactly what I thought, because I get to the boarding desk. They check my passport, and he says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Derek, I cannot let you on the flight." And I was like, "Yeah, wait, what's this going to cost me?" And he says, "No, it's not like that." And then explained the rule, and then I felt bad, like, I shouldn't have assumed corruption.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, and he just said,
Pushing money over the,
I'm like,
over the table.
what's it gonna take
Yeah.
to get me?
Yeah.
Do you know my friend Benjamin Franklin?
I'm not saying I'm comfortable with this on the table, but I am more comfortable if it's on my pocket. Yeah.
Right. So, and no, it wasn't that. It was just, these 2 consecutive blank pages. I had no
Wow.
idea. And honestly, if I would have been aware of that rule, I would have asked them when I crossed other borders during that trip to put the stamps more strategically so that I preserved that.
But why would you know that?
Yeah. So
That's
we had to
fascinating.
reroute. It was nice. I had a couple extra days in Victoria Falls. Decided to go bungee jumping, whitewater rafting. I just basically tried to kill myself as many ways.
Do you know
as I
what
could.
would have helped if you had asked there to be a nice glass coffee table just on the
Right.
ground beneath where you bungee jumped, and you just plunged into the coffee table, but then back up again,
And then
down again.
over and over again until
then I would have chosen you as my BF.
right? You missed that opportunity.
I could have done both.
Yeah, well, never mind. You know.
Oh, so I already won, but let's just see if we can make it 3 for 3
let's go
over
for the
here.
hat trick.
Let's go
Yeah.
for the hat trick here.
Okay.
So besides writing for shows, you've also had some pretty cool appearances in front of the camera.
I've done some stuff.
You've done some stuff. You've done some stuff. Now, your BFF has been able to pull some strings and get you some acting gigs on some shows. Would you rather get an acting gig on The Crown or Stranger Things?
Well, first thing I would do was fire my agent and hire this friend as my agent.
Right. Also, this is hypothetical. We do not have these connections.
No,
but
this doesn't change anything. It's a tough one. This is tough, I think, because I like both shows for different reasons. I think, and I think both shows started off really strongly and then have tailed off a little bit over time.
True.
But I think I'd probably be better at doing that standoffish, emotionally closed, staring out of a window, pretending I don't like my relatives vibe of The Crown. So I think I might have to. I think I've got the dad bod that would work with Stranger Things, but I think I'd look good in a three-piece suit, just wishing I had different children.
Right.
And that's essentially the theme
That's
of
the
The
theme
Crown.
of The Crown. I like
I mean,
that.
sometimes in Stranger Things as well.
Oh, that's
because,
true.
yeah, the kids
That's
disappear, and really, it's
Right.
only Winona Ryder's.
If only
carrying
they
it
mix
back.
it. If
Those
only-
kids get to do whatever they want on that
is
show.
true. That is true. But then it's they're in the middle of nowhere. They're in Hawkins.
Yeah.
You know? I think maybe if Phil and Liz in The Crown had given their 4 kids a D&D session
and a BMX bike.
yeah, and they just played
Right.
that the whole time, then maybe there wouldn't have been all this fuss.
Right.
As I've distilled the entire monarchy into a fuss.
A fuss. I like
I think
that.
the Crown Stranger Things crossover is what would have picked up those middle seasons.
Yeah. Will it be The
that-
Crown? Stranger Things have happened.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go.
But also true.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
they're both. You could call The Crown Stranger Things,
Yeah.
and it would have been the same result.
I think you're absolutely right. So I'm going to go with a heavy heart. I have to say The Crown.
Okay, so we go 3 for 3. We get the hat
Wow.
trick.
That's it. Yeah. Wow.
So for
well,
the
guys,
Crown-
I'm just gonna head out then.
Right.
Leave you to.
I
to it.
absolutely don't blame you. I feel really bad.
Yeah,
now, 'cause
I feel really insulted.
Yeah,
No,
you should.
no.
I loved Stranger Things.
Yeah.
I think when the dust settled, I'd probably revisit that more than The Crown. I find it
Yeah.
weird now we got to the point in The Crown where we're at the point which I remember.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so I'm growing up in the UK, seeing all that stuff happen, particularly when in the 90s and the new series is going to be all about when it all goes wrong for Diana in Paris. And I remember all that. And my mum came in the morning. I'd just flown back from the US, so I was really, really wiped and jet lagged. And my mum came in the morning. She swung open the door. I was a teenager. Went, "Have you heard the news?" I was like, "What?" And she went, "Diana's died." And I went, "Oh," and then rolled over and back. I thought someone I knew might have died.
Like your
Right.
neighbor.
Yeah, but it was a really weird thing because I'd been away for 3 months and missed the whole soap opera that the media circus had
Sure.
driven. They'd created this narrative, as the press do, where we had Dodie and Diana were together. She'd finally found happiness with this man. And then it ended, obviously, horrifically with tragedy in Paris. But it's weird because they're going to do all that. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it.
Yeah, and relive it. And
Well, I'm sorry.
that's okay. I was hoping for a pity point there, but Stranger Things is great, and I do love the '80s nostalgia of it. But
I prefer it, but I think I'll be better in The Crown.
sure,
That's
no, that
my
makes
reasoning.
sense. Yeah, okay.
I think your British accent would kind of stand out in Hawkins. I'm not sure. Maybe you could be like the English teacher in the high school. That's the kind of role that you could have.
I think so. I'd be the one who would have no truck with any of it. I'd just
Right.
walk in here, what's all this hubbub, all this hullabaloo? What's all going on here? You're doing what with a who in the basement? Unbelievable.
I would actually like to see that. Yeah,
I
I
think
think
that'd be-
they do need a British character on. We've teased a little bit of your bio and what you're doing in Denmark, but it's maybe not Hawkins. But could you tell us maybe a little bit about your path here?
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about this when I do stand-up and stuff. I'm what's called a sexual migrant. I met a Dane and we had sex, and now I'm stuck here. But no, more detail is my wife is Danish. I met her in London. Very strange with her. Her mum was dating my uncle.
Oh wow,
Really?
Yeah, my uncle lived in Copenhagen for many years. He's a hairdresser. He has a hair salon in the centre of town, and he was dating this woman. And he came over to London. We were quite close, and still are. And said, "Do you want to come to go out for a curry?" And I thought it was just going to be me and him meeting. And he didn't tell me, because he's very bad at communicating, my uncle, that he brought with him his current girlfriend and her family, which is her son and daughter. And the chemistry was on the table, and we clicked. And within 3 months of meeting, she'd moved to London.
Oh, wow.
Within 6 months, we were engaged. Within a year, we were married. And within 18 months, my son was on the way. And that is why we moved here, because we couldn't afford to keep living in London and upscale. I should point out that my mother-in-law, as she is now, is not still dating my uncle.
Oh,
right.
It's fine. It's amicable, and it would be really weird if they were.
That would be.
So my uncle would be my father-in-law.
Yes.
And I want to point out that it's not. The family tree isn't a stump. Right. There's no blood there. Can I point that out? That was just So we realised when we realised that 2 were going to become 3, we couldn't afford to get a bigger place in where we wanted to live in London.
Sure.
At the time, I was freelance. I'm a writer, is my bread and butter, so I can do that anywhere. So long before the pandemic, I was used to that world. I was used to, staring at my own reflection in the oven door. And so I was happy to move wherever. And I'd been to Copenhagen before to visit my uncle, and I'd been a few times, and I knew I liked it. And so we thought we'd give this a go. So that was in September 2015. So that's how I came over here. And then now my son came along in December that year, and then my daughter came along 3.5 years later. So that was the journey. And I kept doing work. Again, it's the whole thing sort of precursor before people had to do this with the pandemic. I was still working for an international company for 2.5 years of living here. So I didn't work for a Danish company at all. I was still working 100% remotely for Discovery Channel. Actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was doing their social media, writing their content for that. And I used to go over there once a week. Carbon footprint back in the day was not great. And have a meeting, because it was before Zoom, but it was still that. And then I'd come back here and do all my work here. So
did they know that you were in Denmark, or was this kind of on the slide?
I was worried I'd lose the job.
Right.
So I always have props to them for being open-minded and go, well, it doesn't matter. And I remember my manager at the time said, well, it doesn't matter that you're there because you were coming in, once a week anyway. They were in West London, I was in North London, and it made no difference. They said, well, we'll just carry on because we're still delivering the writing. Yeah. So they were great, and so I'd started it there, and then they let it continue, and then it came to a natural end because they suddenly all moved to video content primarily.
Sure. Okay.
And I wasn't providing that. I'm amazed it lasted as long as it did. I remember the phone call. Adrian, hi. It's I was like, I know what this is.
Yeah.
It's almost like those noir movies where the police turn up at the door and you just open the door and go, what took you so long?
Right.
We're going to have to let you go. Like, I knew this was coming. It's fine, thank you.
Something's dead. Yes,
Yeah,
it's your employment with us.
Yeah, and I was like, that's fine. I don't do video content. You need people to do video.
Sure.
So then I had to sort of inward face and start finding work over here. Always writing. And then I sort of continued the performing, as I've always done, and actually dialed it up a lot more because I stopped doing stand-up in the UK. I still did a bit of acting, and then I started doing it again here when I went to an international comedy night, and I realised what a lovely audience it was. And I think it's because there's a huge community of expats, regardless of where you're from, who feel shut out because they can't go and see entertainment that's in a language they understand.
Sure.
So they go to this, and the audience is so pleased to be there. They're what I call a wedding crowd. So they're just happy to be there. They're really supportive. It's not like the classic Bear Pit US or UK stand-up club where they're sitting there arms folded and go, all right, you fucker, make me laugh.
Yeah.
Right.
There's none of that. They're just happy to be there. And so I started doing that regularly, and I've been doing that ever since. And then I started doing improv, American-style long-form improv, which I'd never done. And I learned that entirely here. Yeah, so that's basically where my dynamic is. It's writing, sometimes for people, sometimes for me, and then doing the performing as well.
To go back further, how was your origin? How did you get into comedy and writing in the very first place? Like, was this a life ambition you had when you were a kid, or something you kind of fell into?
Well, I always loved comedy.
Like a glass coffee table.
Exactly.
Yeah, I fell into the glass coffee table. People talk about a glass ceiling. I'm talking about a glass coffee table of comedy, where you can only go down hard.
Right.
And there are scars.
To get stitched up by a Canadian.
Exactly. Pouring gin on my hand. No, I always loved comedy. I was a geek. I used to record stuff off the TV and video it, showing my age, and I'd play it back. And I remember me and my best friend, we would record. We had Monty Python scripts in the books, and we'd record ourselves doing the sketches and things like that. And I went to the same school as one of Monty Python years ago, so it was sort of embedded in the DNA. It was like part of the curriculum. So it's like, you do know that Terry Jones of Monty Python went to your school. I was like, what? And I got into comedy properly when I was about 11. I snuck in. My sister and her friends were watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail on video, and I got found out by laughing behind the sofa because I heard something. And I remember then seeing Life of Brian at Christmas with a friend's house, and it was one of those things where I didn't know things could be that funny. Because I'd grown up always enjoying watching stuff that made me laugh, be it cartoons or Saturday night entertainment. But this was something like, it was like another level of stuff that made me laugh. And then so I just became a comedy geek. So I would always I remember asking for stand-up videos for Christmas and stuff. So the various comedians at the time that I grew up with that I was just obsessed with. And always comedy movies, like Ghostbusters is my favourite film of all time.
Really?
Yeah. I know it inside out. And there's something, but it was the first film I saw in the cinema that wasn't a cartoon in 1984 when I was 6. It was the first film we videoed off the TV the year we got a VHS recorder in 1987. That was the only thing I had. So I watched it back and forth. And it's just always there's something about that film that just everything, I just think it's perfect. Everything works. It's one of those lightning in a bottle things, as they've proven by when they try and sort of reboot it and remake it. It just doesn't work. And then it was watching a terrible sitcom on BBC TV, and I decided I really think I could do better than this. Not out of arrogance, just out of frustration. I thought, I can't believe this is being commissioned. Mm-hmm. So I started getting into, and then I started working in TV, and I thought, well, I'm in through the door, so I could start pitching stuff to people in the company. And it's actually much more difficult because you get labeled as what you're hired to do. Yeah. So they go, well, we're not going to give him anything because he's just Adrian that works in the web team.
Right. Oh, he's just a writer. Oh,
he's just this thing. He's just the guy that changes the images in Photoshop. So it's actually harder in a way. And but I sort of kept plugging away, and I eventually got a job working in Comedy Central. And I was working with the web team, and we just pitched some ideas to make some comedy shorts, sort of short form content. And they were great. They just said, well, yeah, fine. Here's a small amount of money. Go and make it. It was like the old, this is amazing. And we also started recording a series of, I was producing podcasts like in 2012, 2013, the very beginning of it, this comedy podcast with these two comedians. And there was a nice little circle to this where one of the guests we got was Terry Jones of Monty Python.
Oh, wow.
And I remember being in his kitchen in the afternoon, and he was like, would you care for a Prosecco, Adrian? And I was thinking, if I could tell the 11-year-old me that had gone to that school that I'd be in his kitchen, he'd be handing me a glass of Prosecco, and we recorded with him. And sadly, he passed away because he got this form of dementia. And when we were recording it, he said his memory was starting to go. So the early signs were already there. But that was a full circle moment and a pinch me moment. Yeah, and it's just been... I've been kind of doing stuff for myself and doing stuff for other people in order to do. It's like one for money, two for the show. I think it's a really good phrase because you're constantly trying to make stuff to get money so you can do stuff for you. That's a passion project.
100%.
Yeah. So that's the route. I'm always a comedy geek. And now I get to, I've been doing it a long time on both sides of the camera. So
yeah. Which do you prefer? Because it's probably a different skill set, of course, and maybe scratches a different itch for you. But do you find it more rewarding or enriching doing sort of the creative process and the writing, or getting to do the on-camera work?
Well, the on-camera stuff feeds the ego.
Sure.
The stuff on stage feeds the ego. I find it interesting that I do improv and stand-up because I've encountered a lot of people feel they're mutually exclusive, and there's a lot of rivalry between the camps, and I think that's utter nonsense because I think they feed into each other very well. Like certainly doing improv has really helped my emceeing.
All crowd work is improv.
Yeah, all crowd work is improv, and it's the principles of improv. So it's active listening, it's being mindful, it's taking time to to respond and respond positively to keep the energy positive in a room whilst having fun with them. I love doing both for different things. I think stand-up ticks the three. So stand-up has the performing and the improv and the writing, right? And I love doing improv, but improv just has the performing and the improv. So if you think of it like a triangle. So there's one thing missing from improv. And because I'm a writer, first and foremost, I'll always enjoy that. But that also comes with the challenge where you get frustrated if you've written some material, written a bit that you think's really good, and then it dies. Because it always dies.
And then somebody doing improv can just get up there, hear the word lemon and create something that kills, and you're like, damn.
I know, but then audiences are different. Stand-up audiences are much more cynical, and they sit there. They have an expectation. Back to what I said earlier. Improv crowds are like, we don't know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. Let's see and find out. So they're a little more forgiving. Yeah, much more forgiving.
Yeah.
Sure. I think bad improv is worse than bad stand-up. I find them both insufferable to watch, and I've been guilty of both, I should add. Sure, my time. But I find bad improv, I just have to leave a room.
Yes.
But because the audience is so forgiving, it's like, come on. But bad stand-up, I think you can kind of you can maybe see what they're trying to do. I mean, the only downside of it is it becomes what we call in England, I don't know if this phrase exists in the US, we call it a busman's holiday, which is when you do something for a living, you don't want to do it in your own time. So people will go, hey, we're going to go to a comedy club at the weekend, do you want to come? It's like, absolutely not.
Right.
But then the other side of it is I can watch a comedian who I absolutely love and still not crack a smile because I'll just be going, oh, that was brilliant. That was excellent.
Sure, you're watching it almost more as a critic.
Yeah, you're watching the technique, you see what they did,
Yes.
you see the structure, and you see the jokes, and you see how it works, and it can sometimes take the fun out of it. So when I do see a comedian that just makes me laugh like a fan, then I know it's something special. But yeah, I think to answer your question, which I realise I didn't, I would say they have different strengths and benefits which I enjoy the most, and I'm lucky that I get to do all of it.
Sure.
Like the writing I love, but it is also very solitary. I mean, writing books, I'm up in my office in the attic for, hours over a period of months. And I can come down feeling a bit strange. and my family certainly point that out. Because I always thank them at the beginning of a book for putting up with me.
Right. And what's that process like? Because I'm glad you brought up your books, because we were wanted to get into that. So the first book that you have out, can you tell us a little bit? I know it's about Stan Lee and Marvel, but also so much more beneath the cover.
Well, that was the thing. I didn't want to do a biography.
Yes.
I realized what's interesting is that Stan Lee, he was, at the forefront of American popular culture as it evolved from the 30s till 2018 when he died. So I thought, well, this is a great way to use his eyes as a prism through which you can see the evolution of popular culture. So the book is using his life to frame the fact that I then go into these kind of tangents talking about the death of music hall and the rise of radio and the comedy that was on the radio and what influenced his style, then going into the cinema and then the birth of TV and then the birth of the internet. And he had his hand in all this stuff to greater or lesser extent. And I think that and then you see the correlation between, as Marvel comics developed, they would change to reflect the times that were going on. So so that's why the superheroes that were created in the 70s were a bit more darker and edgier, because America in the 70s was pretty dark and grubby post-war,
a little brooding,
Vietnam. It was a bit broken. Whereas the 60s was away. That's where you get, Iron Man and the Avengers.
And the post-war period, I think that's where like Captain America.
Yeah, and that was the only Marvel character that wasn't created in that we know. The mainstay, it was this purple patch between like 61 and 65, where all of them were created by this little hub of creatives in Marvel. So Stan Lee marshalling people like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. So it's so weird from 60. So Captain America was created as like war propaganda.
Right.
So that
right.
was,
I didn't realize
he was the only
that.
one. So he was like 1940.
Okay.
And it was created by
like anti-fascist,
Simon.
right?
Yeah,
it was
basically it was him socking Adolf in the jaw.
Yeah.
So that was created and it flew off the shelves because all the GIs were reading it when they were overseas. And it was, that wasn't Stan at all, because he was like a teenager. He just started working for the company. So that was Jack Kirby and Simon. When he took over and became the editor, 61, it's astonishing, to 65, you've basically got the Fantastic Four, you've got Hulk, you've got Iron Man, you've got Thor, you've got the X-Men, and I think the Avengers premiered in the same month.
Wow.
That's number one. Spider-Man, of course, Doctor Strange, all those ones that were just the center of the MCU back when the MCU was good. They were all just created in this 5-year window of just this purple patch of creativity.
It's incredible.
It's like Dolly Parton wrote Jolene and
I Will Always Love You.
And I Will Always Love You on the same day within like 2 hours. Yeah.
I love that stuff when you find out about it,
So just imagine having like that stroke of creativity of like Stan Lee or Dolly Parton in those two instances. Like, can I just get a little bit of that for over a year?
But I always want to stress, because it's people. For all the fans of Stan Lee, he has a lot of detractors because he was a bit of a showman and a hack.
Sure.
And there's always been debate about how much involvement he had in creating it. He was the editor. Some would say he came up with all of it and he made the other guys draw it. The others said no, the artists were the ones who came up with everything and he just basically signed it off.
He was the marketing guy.
Yeah.
He was the face of it.
And he was the face of it. And he was a brilliant marketeer. And I think that was his true talent. And he had the gift of the gab and he had the face. So he was the face of Marvel. And he made some pretty smart decisions throughout its tumultuous career to get to that point. But you should never forget that essentially people like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko were just as talented, if not more so, in different areas. And it was together this melting pot creativity. So that was the book. I didn't want to do a biography. I wanted to just tell the story of 20th century entertainment.
Yeah.
That's cool. How was the experience for you? Because you're basically telling the story of American entertainment. You're a Brit. What perspective do you think you brought, being from the other side of the pond? It's same language, but different culture, and to some extent, and to kind of critique it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the lens I would be able to put, and I think I achieved it, was sort of a bit of detached humor and a bit of cynicism. Like, I was very mindful not to fall on one side. I read there was a book that, unfortunately for me, about Stan Lee that came out at the same time with a really hefty marketing push by a big publishing company. And I read it, and I thought it was basically just a hit piece on Stan Lee. And I actually thought it was really lazy. I won't mention the name of it or the author, but I was, having done my own research, I thought he decided Stan Lee was a liar, a crook, and a hack. And he just perpetuated that throughout. And then sometimes the arguments were they were either a bit ad hominem or they were a bit inconclusive, or I thought it clearly had an agenda.
Right, starting with a narrative and then just
and
trying to convince
finding the evidence
reader
to fit in.
Yeah.
It's that confirmation bias based on a grand scale. And I was very mindful saying, this is what we know, this is what we don't know. Read into that what you will. So this is what some of the people said, this is what Stan said, and then we look at the author. This is where being a historian helps, because then you look at, well, where did that evidence come from? Is it primary? Is it secondary? Who said it? Why are they saying it? What's their agenda? So I presented that. I also was happy, as I said, to put some humor into it. I want all my books, regardless of what they're about, they have comedy running through it. Because I think that there's a danger to be very... I love you guys. I love America very much. But I think there's a tendency America can take itself seriously, I think, sometimes. I think it can be quite sort of, earnest. And I didn't want to be... I always wanted to do a little wink to the camera, because that's what Stan's writing was. If you read his editorial in his Marvel comics, there was always a wink to the audience. That was one of his strengths, creating this community. And so I wanted to do that. So there was always a little bit of tongue-in-cheek about the writing. So that was what I think brought to it. But
it struck me... that you mentioned trying to include that in your writing. Your second book, which I believe comes out in January. Is that right?
January 30th.
Now I'm excited for this, and we'll talk about the topic, because I'm just trying to square that peg of writing humorously on the topic of your second book, which is Death in the Victorian era.
Death in the Victorians.
Right. So hilarious.
Oh, brilliantly funny. I don't know. I think there's always comedy to be found in certain situations.
Sure.
It's like one bit as an aside. There's a chapter on it about ghosts and the rise of sort of spiritualism, the spiritualist movement that came out in the Victorian age in the 19th century. And I think part of that is because it's partly because a chap called Darwin came along and kind of blew a hole in religion for many. But then what's an interesting question is, why didn't the Victorians become atheists? It's because they had a lot of people could square believing in ghosts with conventional religion, and also a lot of people had to believe in something. People don't like it. Takes a lot of guts and balls to go, you know what, when I die I rot and that's it. Right. So it's nice to believe, well, maybe when we do go, there is something out there afterwards. Now, I'm not saying we go to heaven, but maybe we go to some astral plane. It's also, I think we're in our human instinct is to be a little bit more narcissistic, to think that, like, this can't be wait, this is not it. I have so much more to do. You need me around. Even if that me around is limited to just knocking books off shelves. Right. That was me. That was me. Exactly. I chose that book. Yes. So I think that, for example, but the point is, you can't not laugh at these things. There was a belief in a ghost there's a ghost chicken that's supposed to haunt this square up in Highgate, North London, where I used to live, that used to belong to Francis Bacon, who wasn't Victorian. A sort of philosopher, scientist, but not the artist. There's another Francis Bacon. But I love the fact that they perpetuated this myth that there is a spectral chicken and roaming around. So what am I supposed to do with that information? Right. Should I see it? Am I supposed to run away? Do I hear it? Yeah. Exactly. Is it going to attack me? Yes. Will it possess me? Yes. Phantom plucking. Is it just a ploy from Kentucky Fried Chicken? Exactly. It's a marketing ploy. Yeah. That's all. But all these stories come out, and there's always these side things to it. And there was the thing, Victorians had this thing about ghost flash mobs, where people would hear there was a sighting of someone. There was several happening in Bermondsey in East London, and this is all pre-social media, so they'd get together and hundreds of people would swarm to a location, sometimes in the dead of night, just in the off chance they might see this ghost. Oh, wow. And there's so many interesting... A bit of background where I've jumped ahead, like I said, Death in the Victorians, this came from, I did a master's postgraduate degree in Victorian culture. Okay. So as I said, I love my history. And I just kept going back to death with the things I was choosing to write about. And I thought there is such an interesting narrative about this. And it's basically, the Victorian age was an attempt, in a nutshell, for the living to reconnect with the dead. Because in the Industrial Revolution, too many people were dying in these big cities. So the graveyards were filling up. Literally bodies coming out of the ground. There was disease, there was infection. People couldn't go and pay their respects to their loved ones because there were sometimes, families, huge families, they're all dying. The child mortality was very high. There was cholera. There were all these epidemics. And so the Victorian age was an attempt to reconnect the living with the dead. So that's why you get the birth of the beautiful garden cemetery. They go, they closed down in London, they closed down the churchyards. You can't bury people in there anymore. Don't go anywhere near them. But we're going to make these beautiful landscaped, classical influence cemeteries on a hill looking over the city, and you can go there and it's somewhere you want to spend time. But also you can pay your respect to your loved ones. And death became this ceremony, this ritual where you get these wonderful extravagant gravestones that you'll see in these cemeteries. There were 7 built in London within a very short window of each other that was commissioned just to cope with it. You got Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris, which was the inspiration for the stuff in London, which is beautiful. So there was all these attempts to reconnect death. Death became a spectacle. Very quickly, I have to tell you, this is the kind of thing you'll find in the book. Behind Notre Dame Cathedral, there was the Paris morgue. And they opened it up to the public because so many bodies were being fished out of the Seine. The police needed help identifying these anonymous corpses. What they didn't see coming was it became a sideshow, and literally tens of thousands of people a day, families, would go to the Paris morgue to stare at the corpses. It was death as spectacle.
What?
Every morning there was a big velvet curtain, and they pulled back the curtain and revealed these cadavers on a stone slab each.
That they pulled out of the river.
Well, or they found somewhere around Paris.
The street,
so it just became
and
a thing. Yeah, exactly. And they'd have a narrative, so people would be queuing out of the building around the block, and they'd have these signs on the wall painting a narrative like, you're about to see. It was like it's almost, Chamber of Horrors. You're about to see so-and-so who was found in an alley. Who were they? Who killed them? Warning, this is not for the faint-hearted. All that kind of stuff.
Right.
And what's interesting is there was this little window where it was that popular. One of the big popular... Charles Dickens was obsessed with the Paris morgue. He wrote that whenever I'm in Paris, I have to go there. I'm compelled to go to the Paris. I hate it, but I have to go there. And then it closed down because of sanitary reasons at the turn of the century, as you'd expect. And the building's gone. And there's not a shred of it that remains. So if you walk to Paris now, behind Notre Dame Cathedral, you'd be walking out and you would have no idea that this building was there.
Wow.
There was the tourist attraction of Paris in the mid to late 19th century. And it's these little things that I stumbled upon. I thought, this is fascinating.
How do you... Because I think, in my mind, I think of the Victorians as a very prudish era. It's an era that you have all these kind of... social rituals that you have to do, like everyone's very etiquette and covered up, and we don't talk about different things like that. Like,
were they just covering up something deeper?
Yeah.
I think that, like any other period in history, there's elements of both.
Sure.
It's like flip that on its head. You talk about the 60s, right? If you talk to my parents who lived through the 60s, they go, well, there was none of that permissive society going on. Everyone was like free love and hippies and stuff. They weren't. They were just getting about their day, going to work, being as buttoned up as British as possible. But we know the narrative of the 60s as free love, permissive society, Woodstock, all that kind of thing. But I think, so flip that reverse, I think there was all sorts of debauchery going on in Victorian culture behind closed doors. There are various occult societies, like the Golden Dawn, where Aleister Crowley was a member, and who knows what was going on there. There was lots of occult societies. There was always the bordellos and the houses of ill repute. You look at all the main narratives of the Victorian age, ending culminate arguably with something like Jack the Ripper, which is a morality tale about the wages of sin, because these were terrible prostitutes. That's why they were killed, and there's a whole chapter about why Jack the Ripper didn't exist. Another thing, he was basically a construct by the press. All the narrative of Jack the Ripper that we have is entirely fictional. All we can say for certain is that some women were tragically killed. We can't even say one person.
Which probably happened for
all the time.
Decades in that era.
Because it was a deprived part of London. It was really dangerous. Police didn't want to go in there.
Yeah.
And it happened all the time, but this narrative was cooked up. And that's the narrative that stays with us. Point is, I think that the Victorians were buttoned up, but they were also happy to do whatever.
Right, just like any other era.
And I think Michel Foucault writes about it in his History of Sexuality. He writes about how there's a myth that the Victorians were buttoned up. They actually were just down for whatever.
Yeah.
They just, that there was a sense of, there was a religious awakening with the sort of the Methodist movement there's what's interesting, in a nutshell, the Victorian period marks a sort of a shift from the romantic sort of Enlightenment period with the rational sort of modern age. And I think that period in history, that's what happens. It's sort of they clash. So it's this sort of romantic sort of time of the 18th century, and then building up to the 20th century. So science and reason are clashing hugely with faith and belief.
Sure. I mean, the whole world has changed. The Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
In a very short period of time.
Very short.
Any social change. Yeah.
It couldn't keep up with it, which is why there was a big problem with death.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't build new housing. to cope with the sheer number of people that were moving from the villages to the towns for work. And then everyone was dying, and they just didn't know what to do with it.
Right. They had all this mechanization and automation in factories, but didn't have any kind of safety protocol or OSHA regulations or anything to keep people safe on the job. Again, contributing to the death.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. It's like with AI now, but it's now white-collar jobs that are under threat.
Right.
Exactly. There wasn't a writer's strike. There was just the Paris morgue.
Yes, exactly. Go there and stare at some people, But I thought it was a fascinating subject, and it was a tough book to write, not just because some of the stuff was kind of dark. I look at all how they applied science to handle death. Like, say, so there's a lot of death photography. There's a chapter on that. And how, so, there are things that we would find really macabre, like taking photos of your dead kids, which they would do and put them on the wall. But they would consider that perfectly normal. Because they go, well, most people can't afford a photograph. So chances are, if we're going to spend money on a photograph, it might as well be the last one we can.
To remember.
Right.
Oh, God.
All these kind of things. So we find that really macabre. But they go, well, that's just what we did. That was our memento mori.
Right.
Right.
But it was kind of dark to be in that world for a year and a half.
I can imagine.
Yeah. But I find it fascinating, and I'm proud of the book. So I'm looking forward to when it comes out.
I'm excited to. And is it available for pre-order now? Or
it is.
Okay.
It is. It's. I've noticed it is. They didn't tell me. I found out by mistake. But it is out, available for pre-order.
I think it's time to maybe have a little reckoning in the BFF factor, because we found out that you and Mike are BFFs. And
hat-trick BFFs. 3-0 BFFs.
Absolutely.
Yes. And after being shut out, I want to put this to one final test and see if maybe I can sneak in there and position myself as a contender.
You want to claw back victory from the jaws of defeat, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay, fine. We can handle this.
See what I can do here. And I want to do that by testing you both in round 2 of our BFF test to see how well you can work together. So, and we're also going to tie in some themes that we've already talked about, like history and death. Because we're going to play a game where I'm going to throw out some figures of history. And you're going to tell me if Mike has outlived them yet or not. Mike is about to celebrate his 42nd birthday.
Okay, so you're not. So that means they have to be 41 or 42.
42. So let's just go like
42. I think
make
it's
it even 42. Did these historical figures make it past 42?
Highly unlikely.
Yeah. The best ones don't.
No,
but we're lucky that Mike has. And
thank you
far,
for that.
Yeah. So far.
Well done on outliving Jesus.
Yes. That is a big deal when you hit your 33rd birthday.
I think everybody says,
everyone. That's the benchmark. How many miracles have I achieved?
Right.
How many followers do I have on?
What have I done with my life?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we have more followers than G. I mean, we got 33,000.
He only had.
That's not.
He only had 12.
That's not fair.
Pathetic. He wasn't an influencer. Was Jesus an influencer? No, he was an enabler. Turning water into wine. Come on. We didn't even know whether there was a teetotal wedding.
Right. I mean, if you were that fun at parties and you only got 12 people to follow you.
Right.
Exactly.
I've got other questions.
Yeah, you turned water into cheap wine.
Exactly.
The Bible literally says, drink the good wine first. Like, it's an instruction manual.
That's a very good point.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. I wouldn't follow all of it to the letter.
No.
Otherwise you wind up in... You can only covet so many
Shopping
neighbors'
your kids in half and all those
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
It's a lot in there that's not great. But I digress. Let's
Wildly.
Let's see where we can go with this now.
Okay.
And has Mike outlived the following? So I'm going to name 5 people. You just have to work together as a team.
Yes.
You guys decide together if Mike has outlived them or not. I'll reveal if it's right or not. You have to get 3 out of 5 correct in order to keep your BFF status. Otherwise, I'm just jumping in there and breaking it up. And
that's fine. I will say before we start, on one level, that we know that Mike has outlived all of them.
Technically. Okay, let me rephrase this. Technically, he's outlived them all chronologically.
Napoleon walks in now. Surprise!
So, the first person is Mike, currently older than Edgar Allan Poe at the time of his death.
Oh, Poe. Difficult, complicated Poe.
Very complicated.
Married his cousin.
Yeah. He was full of self-loathing, yet utterly arrogant.
Yes.
A vicious critic he was. He was a critic in the paper. I think you've outlived him. I think he didn't keel over at about 40,
He was quite
39.
young because he drank himself to death.
Yeah, they found him gibbering on a bench.
Yeah.
And we've all been there.
Well, just after a Julefrokost.
Exactly, just as a Danish Christmas. We're all Poe.
We're all a little Poe.
Right? enough snaps and we're all down
It's
there.
a little dark, a little.
Yeah. Nevermore. We all say that after a drinking binge.
Right.
Oh, nevermore.
I read recently that they've re-examined his health, and he may have had some kind of disorder because it's written that he would only have maybe 2 drinks and was just.
So he was allergic to alcohol.
Yeah. That's what they think. He might have had some kind of disorder.
Maybe.
But it's more fun to think of him as just some doddering drunk.
A troubled genius.
Yes.
And you are correct. He died at 40.
Yes.
That was pretty spot on.
Yeah.
It is funny in that era, though. Like every picture of him looks old.
Yes.
He didn't look well.
He never
But he had a
looked
weird
well.
look about him. He had the big forehead and the strange sort of. He just didn't look well.
Yeah.
They did an adaptation. Did you ever see the film The Raven with John Cusack playing Poe?
No, I didn't.
And they actually really get right how he's an unlikable person. But he's far too good looking. Well, it's like it's John Cusack. He was a weird looking man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he had a rough life. He probably needed some filler and
I think so.
a weekend in Turkey and
something like that.
Yeah,
You know.
but they didn't do that back then. So, how about the second one? So far 1 point. Okay, just got to get 3. How about John Lennon?
Ooh.
Have you?
Well,
lived
he was
longer?
40. It was 1980, wasn't
Yep.
it? I'm pretty sure he was in his 40s.
I think so too.
But maybe he was he
He's
40?
80, so would he have been born in?
If he was born in
late
1940.
So he'd only been 40.
They're all around that age because they're all around
Yeah.
the same age as my mum.
Okay.
So he was either 40 or 41 when he was killed.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I bet he was younger then.
So I think you've outlived Lennon.
I think I outlived Lennon.
You know, and your solo work has been impeccable.
Right?
You know?
It's amazing. I think of myself more as more a George Harrison type, a little bit, kind of. I don't know, not at all.
No. What are we going for? Do we say you've outlived him?
I think I outlived him. I
Yeah.
think so.
Okay, correct. Yeah, and 40. All right, spot on.
Wow.
Wow. All
Well
right,
done.
could have made these a bit hard. Okay. Let's just muddle through then.
They are hard.
They
How
are-
dare you undermine my knowledge?
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
it's fine.
The
I'm
power
happy.
of deduction.
We'll throw maybe a harder one then. So how about Mary Stuart, a.k.a. Mary Queen of Scots?
Oh, you definitely outlived her. Mary
Really?
Queen of Scots. Yeah, she was like 12 or something stupid, wasn't she? No.
Queen of Scots. Is she Bloody Mary?
No, that's
she's in some
Mary
movies.
Tudor.
Okay.
Bloody Mary is Elizabeth's sister.
Ah,
So
okay.
she was the one that is the Mary in the Mary quite contrary. Or
Really?
Or the Three Blind Mice.
How
I
does her
think.
garden grow?
Yeah, also she's like the farms. I don't know. But no, Mary Queen of Scots was trying to be put in place as the queen.
Yes.
And then she was killed, and then her lover was killed up in Holyrood in Edinburgh.
Yes.
And
Oh
then-
no, actually, I think her husband. Okay, maybe she had a lover as well. Her husband was killed in Denmark.
Was he?
Yes, at the castle not too far. It's on Sheeland.
Well, the Hamlet Castle.
No,
Oh.
there's another one.
There's another
We went
castle
there.
in Denmark.
Yes.
But she was kept in prison for a long time before being executed.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, her husband was as well, and he haunts.
I would find it very odd just by virtue of it being during the Stuart Tudor times that she lived longer than 40. But maybe she did. Maybe she's hung on in there and then was beheaded age 43 or something.
Yeah.
This could be a wild card.
Could be a
Because we also there's that sort of probability thing because we've had 2 people that you've outlived.
Right.
It must be time for one.
It's older. Yes.
Yeah. So let's go for
It's like the exam. You got to pick C. You haven't done
yeah,
C in
you
a
haven't done
couple.
C.
Yes.
So she outlived you.
I think so.
Yeah, she made it to 44.
44.
look at
Wow.
that. 3 for 3.
Interesting.
so-
3 for 3. This is good.
We might as well finish them off.
We're just-
then.
okay,
But you guys
go,
stay
no,
with us.
we can still stumble.
See what we can do. Yeah, which will just be for my enjoyment, not for anything
Right.
else. How about Steve Irwin,
Ooh.
crocodile hunter?
Yes, I remember.
Crikey.
I remember when they tried to sort of say that he died the way he wanted.
Right.
Doing what he
And
loved.
it's like, I don't believe that. I
Molesting
think,
stingrays.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Most people would rather die peacefully having a good
Correct.
death surrounded by family
Correct.
in old age, not with a stingray embedded in their chest.
No.
Yes.
I think you outlived him. I think he was 40,
I think he was younger too.
39, 40.
I agree with
I
that.
think you outlived him.
I think so
Yeah?
too.
You want to go with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with that.
He was 44.
Oh, we finally lost one.
I finally get some points on the board here,
pity
guys. I
point,
really
finally.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
you know, you
doing
have
that.
your sympathy points.
You know, another thing, and maybe this speaks more to the good people of Philadelphia, my hometown, but the year that he died, the Philadelphia Phillies the baseball team played a team from Tampa Bay called the Rays, the
Really?
the Stingrays.
Yes.
And there were a lot of signs that said like, "Win it for Steve."
Really? It's like I don't know. Of course it's tragedy, right? But the man who made a living pissing off deadly animals gets killed by a pissed off deadly animal.
I mean, there's an irony to this.
There is a little.
Beautiful.
It's what he would have wanted.
I don't.
Yeah, right.
Want is a strong word, but it's more.
No, it's what would have happened.
What
Yes.
would the Victorians think of?
Well,
of
they
this
would have
man?
put him on show.
Yeah,
Sadly, that's
exactly.
what they would have done.
Which maybe what you deserve.
Yeah.
We'll do one more.
Yes.
Why not?
I like the way you're equating, by the way, these figures from history. Mary Queen of Scots, Steve
Irwin.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, I didn't say whose history, but
Okay, you're right.
technically,
You're right. Someone is very important to
from the past.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
And on that note, then how about Judy Garland?
Oh God, because she looked much older than she was.
Mm-hmm.
Because she was ravaged by the end by drinking
all those drugs and-
Very
yeah.
sad. Maybe she was your age. Again, she's clearly hovering around the 40 to 45 mark.
Yeah.
Just thinking about when it was, because she was a teenager with The Wizard of Oz, which
Mhm.
was what, 39, 40?
That sounds right.
Yeah, and then she died in the 60s. I don't know. I can't call this one. This is for you.
Sorry, I think she was a bit older than me. I think
Yeah?
while she looked like she was in her 60s when she died, I bet it was mid 40s.
Okay.
I bet she was mid
So
40s.
she outlived you.
I think she outlived me.
Okay.
She was 47 actually.
She was
So I mean,
47.
she
Okay.
but she looked.
Yeah, she
she
lived.
lived.
She was
Life-
she lived.
She lived.
Yeah, yeah.
Sad,
But not
very
half
sad,
of
like
a-
a sad.
No,
Yeah,
it wasn't a good
yeah,
life,
they were
No.
just pumping her full of things
Well,
to
it
wake
was
her up.
heartbreaking, wasn't it? There was the time when there was no care for. This lasted in the cinema for decades. I mean, you look at The Exorcist now. What was that made in '73? They wouldn't be able to get away with what they made Linda Blair do in
Oh,
that film.
yeah.
No.
That's why it still shocks.
Yeah.
I'm amazed they all agreed, including her parents. Go, yeah, she can do that scene with the crucifix. That's fine.
Right.
And it's like it's not.
Maybe
It's
not. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe give her a break. Give her a
Right.
little.
Yeah. Do we have to do the 15th take?
just wheeling
Right.
out, teenage Judy Garland, giving her a shot of some kind of like I don't know,
Some
sort of
Oh,
upper and
uppers
Yeah, yeah.
and
So she didn't know who she was or where she was by
Yep.
the end of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Poor man. Well, on that note, that's a
happy-
Wow.
Yeah.
But she gave us so much because somewhere over the rainbow she's
Of
still there.
course.
There we go.
Hopefully somewhere
Better.
better
Yes.
Yes.
than
Yeah.
that set, that Hollywood set that she was tortured on. But
Well, that got dark.
impressive.
well, speaking of rough transitions, I know that
And yet a seamless segue.
I get a
Yes.
seamless segue.
Yeah.
Going from London to Copenhagen
Yeah.
as you did, probably had to be a bit of a transition. Can you remember anything that really stuck out as like a big moment for you, or maybe really stuck out as wow, that's so different than life in London?
Yeah, I think because London is massive
Sure.
and
Yeah.
it's so densely populated. I
Yeah.
mean, the entire population of Denmark is the same as South London.
Right.
To give a
'Cause
kind of
London's
frame of
12
reference.
million.
Yeah,
or
something like that.
Yeah.
So I was struck in a positive way by being able to get on the public transport and not have my face in someone's arm. But the weird thing is you just get conditioned to that living in London. You just know that getting on the tube is going to be horrible, and you just do it.
Yeah.
So I think I was struck by the sheer space that I was afforded. I was immediately struck by the lack of variety on offer. And because it's a wealthy country, it's a wealthy city, and I thought that there are so many cool things about Copenhagen, but certainly the lack of variety in terms of shops. I've talked about this at length in the past with supermarkets and things. I think I suddenly found it frustrating. The world suddenly felt very small,
Sure.
and it's odd because I grew up in a tiny little 1,000-year-old English village, where the population was 7 of us and a cat, and the cat had moved in. The cat wasn't even native, so I should be used to that kind of small thing. But I think there's the idea that Copenhagen. Someone famously said it's the village that thinks it's a city, and I think that there's a strange disconnect between how the Danes perceive Copenhagen and then the reality of it if you come from a bigger metropolis.
Anywhere else, yeah.
I missed the. Well, this is the thing. At first, I was struck by the space and the quiet, and this is nice. But I actually started to miss the energy, like walking through. When I used to work in the centre of London, walking through Soho on a Friday night.
It's so
or something like-
vibrant
It's
there
so
on a
vibrant, and the
Friday.
energy and stuff, and that's something that I started to sort of miss. But at the time, I've just become a dad, so my world had become very small.
Sure.
That was the challenge I had, becoming a parent and moving to a new country. That you're being pulled into completely opposite directions, which I didn't see coming. That
You
was
had
very
so
interesting.
much at that time.
Yeah, well, the funny thing
changing.
is, I think when you move to a new country, you need to be as selfish as possible because you need to find out what's there for you. What can you get satisfaction out? What can you get sustenance from that affects you? How do you find your feet? You have to be selfish. When you become a parent, you have to be the most selfless you can possibly be.
Sure.
Right? So it's a weird tension. And I was being pulled in polar opposite directions. So I found it very difficult because I wanted to go out and explore and find my feet in a new home. And then at the same time, I couldn't because I had a tiny baby and a wife who wasn't working, and we needed to, make all that work as well. So that was you're right, kind of in the eye of the storm as well when you become a parent. So that tension was a difficult circle to square.
It's funny because moving away can almost make you look at yourself and where you came from, whether it's London or the UK in general, obviously the US for us. It kind of makes us look at where we came from a little bit differently.
Every day.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
Yes.
I mean, there was another comedian came over once. I think I can't remember where he was from, but he said, when I go abroad, I'm considered that Romanian guy or whatever. Whereas back home, I'm just a guy.
Yes.
Right.
You don't have to think about your identity when you're in your indigenous sort of land.
Yeah.
And so, I'm always thinking about it. And also, I get defined by it by others.
Oh, of course.
Oh, you're that British guy. And sometimes it really irks me. Because
And always the worst parts.
yeah, absolutely. Well, you're typical Brit moaning.
Right.
That kind of thing. And
Right.
I'm like, well, maybe I'm moaning because what you're saying is annoying me. It's not because I'm British. It's because I'm a human and you're being annoying.
Right.
Or this is vexing me. I'm actually quite a positive person. I like being happy. I'm naturally happy. But people go, oh no, here comes another miserable Brit. And it's like, well, maybe because this has annoyed me, and but people decide what you are by virtue of where you're from.
Yeah.
And that kind of annoys me because I like to think we all bleed red,
Yes,
and
sure.
we all have our own differences. We all have our own cultural identities and backgrounds. You can't shake off where you're from. No one exists in a vacuum.
Right.
But sometimes I think, well, I'm not the British guy. But I am. But then sometimes you might lean into it and go, oh, hello, and just try and
It's like a copper.
exactly. It's just be all fumbling. Oh golly, gosh, I'm sort of Hugh Grant kind of thing. I'm really, really, really sorry about this. I'm so sorry about this. It's
Right.
just to be polite and apologetic, and hopefully they won't mind that you're trying to take something.
Right.
It's the British way. I'm sure that's how we got things like the Elgin marbles.
Right,
I'm
right.
so sorry. Do you mind if we have these? Thank you very much.
Right.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I was at a networking event recently, and somebody said to me, "Oh, I really like you, and I don't usually like Americans." And I was like, "Wow, that's honest."
But then you say, well, I
Thank
really like
you.
you too, and normally I don't like judgmental people.
Right.
Right?
It's such a strange thing. Why people feel the need to put a caveat on it.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought all Brits were miserable. It's like, well, what? Well, why?
Yeah. I was at the same event, and a guy kept saying over and over how he was the best designer, the best designer. Oh, I'm the best in what? Oh, in everything. I can design anything. And then later in our conversation, he said, "We know Americans brag a lot." And I was like, "Buddy,
Yeah, exactly.
I barely told you one thing about me."
But there is a reason for that because there's that.
Because we're the best at it.
Yeah,
We're so good at
absolutely.
bragging.
So-
We can brag better than anybody else.
But your culture is, self-promotion is so key to the culture. This you can stem back to the pioneer spirit.
Of course.
The glass
Right.
is half full, and we filled it, by the way.
Right.
And I think that's and people have learnt to do that because in a country so densely populated where there's so much competition, then you have to shout louder than everyone else to get recognised, and
Oh,
that
100%, I guess so.
taps into my profession in the past, and that is actually something that I find difficult about being here. Where they really don't like any kind of self-promotion.
Don't
whatsoever.
stand out.
Don't stand out. Yenta law. There's nothing wrong with Liverpool. And it's like, and that I've found a real challenge.
And then it's sort of like, but then everything is kind of word of mouth, self-promotion on the sly, but only really for the local native. Like it's hard if you're international because you do have to work harder to get those same bonds and those same connections.
Yes, because the connections have been,
And you don't have time to build a 10-year friendship to find the right network. to
Exactly,
get
and I think that's the
an
biggest
opportunity.
challenge. Absolutely,
Yeah.
the biggest challenge a lot of expats face is the fact Danes have been friends since they were like 2.
Right.
And I've noticed this. And now my children are going to sort of Vuggestue and then going to school. They're literally, it's like a boot camp for friendship.
Sure.
And they spend their time together. Of course, they come out the other side friends. But therefore they go, we have enough friends now. We don't need anymore.
Right.
And I went to different schools at different ages. In the UK, I went to a school from the age of 4 to 7. Then I went somewhere else from 7 to 11. Then 11 to 18, and then university. And my friends sort of are from different points in my time. And then I have a lot of friends from work. And I believe I'm a culture where your friends are who you connect with, who you have chemistry with, who bring something to the table, regardless of whether you met them last week, or 30 years ago. And I think there's a certain hardwiring in Danish culture where it's like, no, these are my friends and I don't need any more. I can have acquaintances, but I don't need to. And I think that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Because then my point being, people from the outside find it very difficult to connect.
Sure.
And so, most of my friends, for instance, I've been here 8 years, I would say that 90% of my friends aren't Danes.
Yeah, sure. Same here.
And I'm fine with that. Because I don't believe the expat community is kind of, the old cliche of sort of ghettoing themselves off, just, watching English stuff and drinking Stella Artois and screaming at their wives. I think that what's interesting is I always say I think the international community splatters a little bit of colour over all this grey.
Yeah.
I find it much more interesting to be in a room full of 5 people from 5 different countries because they bring a very interesting perspective on life.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I find if you're a room where it's just Danes, then the conversation will very soon drift to summer houses. And it just gets a little homogenized. And I just London's a multicultural place.
Yeah,
of course.
And so I miss that. And so you can harness that by embracing the expat community.
I think because of that, it is all of those things combined. You do have to be more outgoing but also a bit warmer and and maybe even a little bit of self-promotion because you have to compete with other people for those friendships.
Self-promotion is key to what I do. Yeah. I'm sorry, but it has to be. It's what I do for a living. It's I spent years in the UK, 20 years working to build up a little black book of contacts, and people know who you are. So they will. I'm a freelancer, so they will contact you for work. And if you're not available for one job, they'll contact someone else.
Sure.
So you have to remain top of mind for people. So again, I have no problem with it. You don't have to be arrogant when you do self-promotion.
I think there's a difference between self-promotion and bragging sometimes too. And I think how do you get anywhere in life without nobody else is going to, I'm not hiring a PR agency for myself. I have to be my own. So if I don't let people know that I can do certain skills or tasks or bring something to the table, why would they be my friend or hire me for something or whatever it might be?
Absolutely.
It's nice to be thought of.
And it's essential to be thought of.
You have to do that. America is a bit more individualistic, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing in all circumstances.
No, I would agree too. I want to make it clear, when it comes to equality, race, gender, sexuality,
absolutely,
totally great. We all bleed red, right?
Yeah.
We're all in this together. Yeah. Make the most of what you can. Be kind. Life is about being kind to others. I get that. But like I said, certain ways that the Danish culture is wired, I think sometimes funnels, don't stick your head, the Endelor thing, don't stick your head above the parapet. But I also think that they can also neglect the people who are really struggling because they ultimately sort of cultivate this middle path. Where they don't want people to stand out. Everyone should be kind of homogenized in the middle. And I think the danger of that is that people, and I'm mindful of this with my kids at school, is that people who excel at something, they can be ignored, and people that struggle can get ignored because they're catering for the middle path. They're catering for everything being liverpastei. And some of us don't like liverpastei. And I think if you are good at something, you should be allowed to shine and nurtured and encouraged to be the best you can be at something. And if you're really struggling, you should also be able to get the help you need to get where you need to go. And I think that there seems to be less of a I suppose less tolerance is the wrong word, but there's less of they're less accommodating to the extremes.
Sure.
So how do you square that circle? I mean, obviously your children are half British, half Danish, growing up here. How do you try to blend those two pieces together? And do you feel like you can to make maybe a better whole?
Well, yeah, I think there are so many things that I think a lot of the benefits of Denmark are pastoral. They're not necessarily cultural. Right, and I think that's what attracts a lot of people to it. So everyone is looked after much better than in the UK, and that's the downside of the individual thing. Sure. You can easily just fall through the cracks in that respect. I like the way that they're encouraging my children to be kinder, good citizens. That's important, and that certainly wasn't present in my education at school. But I also want to encourage my kids to, if they find something they're interested in or they like or they're good at, I really want to encourage them to be as good as they can possibly be. Really shine.
Working hard and achieving and excelling does help the community as well.
Yes, as does competition.
As does competition.
If there's no
sure.
pressure for anyone to get better, no one's going to get better, and that might be fine. If someone said to me once that a lot of the way Denmark works really well if you're born into it.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
If you're not born into it, you will inevitably question it by virtue of being from another place that has different ways of operating.
Yes.
Right.
And I think that's where you have challenges of being an expat. So some people will go, well, I didn't think about it. Well, I think this is the way to do it. It's like, well, maybe it is, and you probably might be right. But have you thought about maybe there's something to be said for this?
Yeah.
And I think that's the tension.
Yeah. And things are not necessarily better or worse. They're just different.
They're just different.
A lot of times it's just different. Well, one way that I think the cultures, especially in the UK, maybe have some overlap with Danish culture is in sort of the comedy and the humor. And obviously, since that's a lot of what you do and a lot of your interests, that's probably where you find a little more common ground.
Sometimes really not. It's interesting. Like there's a darkness, I think, that we have the Danes and the Brits have a very robust sense of humour, where there's very few things off topic that you can't joke about, right? But I think what I find interesting is the Danish humour, because Denmark's a monoculture, because it hasn't had the same pressure put on its comedians to develop and perform. Sometimes Danish comedy can feel like where British comedy was 40 years ago.
Okay.
So it can be a little, like, put it another way, I've been hosting a comedy night for 7 years in this country. It's international. It's in English. But 9 times out of 10, if an act comes on that bombs, turns the room to ice, it'll be a Danish comic trying comedy in English, because their material just won't fly with a multicultural audience. And they will come off stage scratching their head going, I don't understand it. I was in Comedy Zoo on Friday night and this killed. And I'm saying, well, who was in the audience on that Friday night at Comedy Zoo? It was probably just a load of white men. Right? Where you're in an international spectrum where you've got people of every gender and sexual persuasion, different age, everything in between, from all over the world. And they'll be from places where you just can't joke about X or Y. I won't use specifics. But I've seen it time and again where Danish comedians will go, I don't, and it's almost like it's kind of, the rebellious streak in Danish comedy sometimes feels a little bit teenage, like they're kicking against things. Yeah. And it's almost a bit juvenile. I'm not saying we're sophisticated, mature, elder statespeople of comedy, but I'm just thinking, like, really? You're doing that? That's a bit cheap.
Yeah.
Because comedy is about, I think, is about never punch down, always punch up.
Yeah.
And a lot of comedy, and the same to the extent for free speech, is about context and intent. What is the context and the intent of what's being said? Why are you making that joke? Why have you written that sketch? What's your observation about? And I think that so often if it becomes, you're just being nasty about people from Greenland, I use the specific, and I've seen comedians do that. Again, I'm not going to mention anyone. It's like, oh, people from Greenland are stinky. I'm like, what are you doing? If we wouldn't get away with that if you were talking about the indigenous population of America or people from the UK having a pop at some, it's not punching down.
Also, it's just, I know sometimes to me that just seems like cheap. Like
really cheap.
If you can't be funny without being misogynistic or borderline racist, like that's not dark humor. That's just dumb humor. Like
I think that's the difference. And I don't think necessarily it's the Danes' fault. It's because of the nature of it's not as mature,
especially if you can't take it, and you can only dish it out.
Because they'll go, oh, you can't. It's that whole thing about, well, you can't say anything anymore. It's like, well, you can.
You
but
can.
I'm asking, why would you want to go down that road? It's really lazy.
Sure.
So that's the thing. I think Danes think this is the Danes think we share a comedy, us Brits, more than the Brits might do.
I've heard that from other British comics as well. Yeah,
you can go to dark places, but I think if you place yourself at the butt of that joke, if you're not punching down, and you make yourself the one who's confused or perplexed or in the wrong or out of sorts or anything, then that's a way I believe you can joke about anything.
Right.
Anything. It's just how you do it.
Who's the butt of the joke and who's
context and intent.
Right.
But the trouble is, the tension we have now with the culture wars is there are people younger than ourselves who actually make a point of saying, no, context and intent don't matter. And I really believe that they do. And I think that's one of the central tenets held by international law about hate speech.
Sure.
And I think it's important to hold on to that and not forget it.
My Danish friends will often say, "Oh, it's about intent. But I think it's because in the U.S. and maybe in the U.K. a bit, we focus more on the person receiving the joke. How are they going to receive it? It's not as much about how me as the deliverer of that joke or that bit of humor, even if it's just a comment in the canteen. Danes worry about, but my intent was this, so you should know my intent, without thinking about the receiver of that joke. So the emphasis is on the person delivering it, not the person receiving it. But in the U.S., we focus on the person receiving it. And not necessarily in a way to censor ourselves, but, Danes will say, oh, but now you've upset me because I feel like I can't be myself.
Yeah.
And I can't just say whatever I want. But nobody can just say whatever they want free of consequences.
And I think that's a very good point. I think there's a natural showman aspect to American culture where they are more mindful of an audience.
Yeah.
I think it's in nature of the fact you see most American comedians, they'll be a bit more suited and booted and a bit sharper and aware of the showmanship. They won't shuffle on stage looking like they've just got up.
Right.
And going on about rape, and it's like, what are you doing?
Right.
What are you doing? And it's about status. You come on being high status, coming across, you're going to come across as sort of a dangerous alpha that's being misogynistic. I think that's very interesting because, like I said, comedy is a dialogue. It's a two-way thing, even if you're making a joke in a canteen. I mean, read the room.
And we have those outlets. We have those comedians or those radio hosts that are considered like a shock jock where they would talk about those things that are a little bit shocking. So it's not that those spaces don't exist, but when you're trying to do something that's universally funny in a comedy club in the U.S., I think it's a little bit more like, well, then the joke should be funny to everyone and offensive to almost none.
Yeah.
Because and the best way is making yourself the butt of the joke.
You have to.
Because self-deprecation and self-irony is a big part of Danish humor, from what I'm told. But sometimes it seems like the audience is supposed to self-deprecate
otherwise
when they receive it.
Exactly. Otherwise, it becomes essentially bullying.
Yes.
And, I think, punch up, be smart. For heaven's sake. It's not difficult. And it's proven to work 100% of the time. But I think some people just think, oh, no, I just want to be shocking because I want to be able to say whatever because of free speech. And this is where we are. But it's like, well, why are you saying it?
Right. Shocking isn't funny on its own accord.
No,
and nobody owes you a laugh. Or
No, exactly. But then I think that complex nuance, the fact we're having this conversation, I don't think would happen in a Danish green room.
Sure, yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I am talking in general terms, but we all talk in general terms all the time. It's called conversation.
Yeah.
But I think for me, there's a much more nuanced take to comedy.
Sure. How about some of the reverse on the cultural side? Because obviously there's a lot of Danish things that have become quite popular in the UK, especially Danish noir TV and shows and things like that. So how do you think that cultural connection has happened? What is it maybe that the British audiences see in Danish material that they like?
The weather.
Oh, it feels commonality.
It does,
there.
doesn't it? If endless sheet rain beating down on you, and that's why they're so. I think there's a jaded cynicism to. If you watch the Nordic noirs, you watch The Bridge or whatever, there's a certain sense of inevitability. It's quite existentially bleak, where they just shrug off another body.
Right.
and I think the Brits quite like that. I think there's a certain sense where the Brits like a kind of. This has happened again, typical. Because we're in a post-imperial funk as a country anyway. The Brits are like, with the glass is half empty and I didn't want the drink in the first place.
Right.
Sometimes, and I think that darkness, that's where the darkness, actually, I think comedy's a red herring. I think the darkness that we do share when it comes to things like drama, because we do a lot of, we like doing gritty dramas. The BBC and Channel 4 have made some excellent ones over the decades. We also do that line in Cozy Murder, as they call it, the Sunday afternoon stuff, like Barnaby, as they call it here, with the Midsummer Murders. It's all from the Agatha Christie days.
Oh, right.
That Cozy Murder, where it's almost like, isn't it cute that vicar just beat that woman to death because this old woman is going to solve who did it.
Right.
And for some reason we like that, but I think there is something where we do like people in raincoats just mumbling in the rain. And I think there's a lot of that in
Denmark.
In Denmark. And the Nordic,
Yeah.
I think because the way it's acted as well is kind of very downplayed. There's a lot of that kitchen sink drama to it, which we Brits kind of like. So I think there's a connection there in the mood. It's a bit dour. It's a bit depressing. And ultimately, aren't we all evil?
Right. I feel like it's always like there's also second order kind of dourness too, because it's not just that there's another murder happening, it's another murder happening and my wife is leaving me and my kids hate me, and like it's like there's those layers of dourness that just
they're
kind
piling
of
it on. And I also think a lot of that is people do watch these things to feel better about their own life.
Sure.
And he goes, well, at least I'm not having to solve a murder as my marriage collapses.
Right.
Because that's a lot of pressure. So I think that there's a connection there. Is we can be quite miserable and cynical. The cynicism is the word I've been fumbling around trying to find. I think, and that carries a lot. I think, like I said, there is a contrast between you guys. America and British is, we are in this sort of, you have the pioneer spirit. You go out and get everything, which is why I think you can be even more about celebrating individual success. Whereas whereas we have it a little, but not as much. Whereas we are a culture that is slightly on its knees at the moment. But then also,
I wouldn't say that like the United States is flying high.
You're
all
right.
the time,
You're right. I mean, you are a bit of a hold my beer on that front when it comes to world leaders, right?
Right.
But
at least we have Beyonce.
Yeah, that's true, and we don't have Beyonce.
Yeah,
no.
But we welcome Beyonce, and I think so. That's part of it. I think we're a bit like, we used to be. I mean, but recently, you look at the soft power the Brits had in the 90s. When it was Cool Britannia, when it was Britpop and everything, and we had a huge amount of soft power. The currency we had culturally, and it was arguably pre-internet, the last decade where the tribes mattered. Because it wasn't all homogenized by the internet. But, the music you chose and the things you wore, be it grunge or house or Britpop or whatever or dance, was important and vital. And it's all sort of, we don't have that anymore. But I'm still intrinsically linked to my homeland.
It's something you can't untether yourself from.
No.
Emotionally, culturally, it's...
I never realized how British I was till I moved away from there.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how I was just very, very, very British.
But it makes sense. I mean, it's almost like you can't prove a negative. Like, it's suddenly you have to prove who you are. When you're in your homeland, you don't have to prove who you are. You just are.
Yeah. And I try and be authentic to myself. I try and be a bit, Nietzsche about it all, and try and be, and admit my limitations, admit my failings. It's like me, the fact that I'm 8 years in and I don't speak Danish.
Right.
I don't have the time to learn it. It's very difficult. My social life doesn't require it, my work life doesn't require it, and my family life doesn't require it. And with all of the will in the world, when I'm not working during the day, I'm doing shows in the evening, and I'm writing a book, and I'm managing 2 small kids with my wife, I have probably half an hour to myself a week. I'm just not going to spend it in a classroom right now. I'm just not.
It was tough when that's part of the decision that we had when we left Danish lessons was, we're at a point where for us at that time, we had to decide if the expat contract that we came here on was over. So we could either localize or go back to the U.S. And if we didn't go back to the U.S., there was no job promised for Mike. We moved here for his job. And we thought, well, if we're going to live here, then we need to have some friends and get involved in some things. We can't do Monday and Wednesday night classes in Danish school and Sprog school and do homework the other 2 nights a week.
Right.
Because there was homework the other 2 nights a week.
Because we all did it. I had classes when I moved here. I signed up.
And so it's like, so 4 nights a week learning Danish to also then potentially go home within 6 months. Or really make an effort to connect, network, and lay down roots to see if we actually want to live here. And that's why ultimately we had to, kind of put it on the back burner.
So much more important. Yeah. I mean, for me, I would add an extra layer on that. I'm a writer, right? I could never do what I do in Danish.
Sure.
I mean, no matter if I got fluent, no matter how fluent I got in Danish, to be a good writer, you have to be inside the language to know how to subvert the language, right?
Yes.
The number of people I know who have passed Pædetale and have taken the Danish test from the government to, give them the ability to get a Danish passport if they wanted to, but don't feel comfortable speaking Danish, especially with Danes. Pretty much everybody I know that's passed it won't speak it. And even if they have Danish stepkids or things like that, they communicate in English because...
Well, you do.
It's unless you're perfect and flawless, it's just almost not worth it.
I know. I think so. And it's you're not really allowed to say it, but I think it's true. And I don't apologize for it anymore. And I get actually quite annoyed when people say, well, you should. You should. It's like, should I? Well, you should mind your own business. Right. It's actually none of your business why I don't speak Danish. I mean, I'm sorry it makes you... Why should I learn something to make you feel less uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Because I guarantee your English will be better than my Danish.
Right.
And I'm happy to work with us in a dialogue. We can switch between the two. I understand a lot of Danish.
Yeah.
Because I've lived here for 8 years. But I don't feel comfortable speaking it.
Yeah.
I can't speak it. That's why I don't feel comfortable speaking.
Not a lot of
right.
There's not a lot of grace given.
Well, this is the theory I've come up
from
with.
From like as a language, like as somebody like speaking a second language, I don't necessarily feel safe.
No,
speaking.
I can't communicate myself.
I don't like getting laughed at. I don't like getting mocked. I don't like.
But I have a theory. No, and I have that too. I feel self-conscious, but I think and there's a concept I come up with, which I base this on nothing, but I stand by this. It's called cognitive elasticity. Right. Mm-hmm. You and I, we have cognitive elasticity because we have heard our language spoken with 500 different
Exactly.
dialects.
Oh, yes.
We speak to someone with the thickest Karachi accent in English. We'll understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
The Danes are not used to hearing anyone
Yeah,
speak
exactly.
Danish who aren't Danish.
By
So
no
when-
fault of their own.
No fault of their
Yeah,
own.
yeah.
But when they hear it, you get a word slightly wrong, and they'll go, well, they do. And I'm like, come on. I remember having to try to say no, bro about 4 times to someone at a wedding once before they understood what I was talking about. And I was like, what? And they went, oh, you mean no, bro? I was like, what did you think I said?
Right.
Meet me halfway here. This is why I'm not comfortable doing it, because
Yeah.
I feel so self-conscious and it's not comfortable, and I'm just trying to get through the day here.
You do have to listen harder when somebody's speaking a second language.
And that's
the,
exhausting.
Even the three of us have different, we're all speaking the same language. We have the same mother tongue, but we all speak it with different accents. Even Mike has an upstate accent that maybe not even...
I thought it was a bit posh.
Yeah.
Posher than
I've never been called posh in my life. I'll take that.
it's all relative.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that we're very used to, and I get it. It's just not something everybody.
Maybe one day I'll make a deal. I'll learn it when it gets easier.
There you go. There you go.
Adrian, thank you so much for your time. We'll keep working on the Danish. We'll keep looking out for your book in January.
Yes.
And can you tell everybody where we can find you?
Well, you can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Adrian_Mackinder, Mackinder. You can see me on stage throughout Copenhagen and indeed Denmark and other countries. I perform stand-up, and I'm also part of an improv duo called If These Walls Could Talk. We have an Instagram page called Walls Improv. It's with Sarah McGillen, who is hands down the best improv performer in Denmark, possibly anywhere.
Brilliant.
And I'm honoured that she's my improv partner. She's also my best friend in this city. So I perform with her. She's part of Inconspicuous Comedy, is the improv group that she runs that company, and I'm part of that too. I'm proud to be part of that. So stand up, improv, If These Walls Could Talk with Sarah McGillen on social media. There's only one Adrian Mackinder. I'm not saying that arrogantly. There literally is. So if you Google my name, it will be me. Find me, follow me, like me. I'm a needy performer. Buy my books, borrow my books. Just read something. Just read. And it'd be very nice to say hello if you ever come to the shows I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you,
Thank
Adrian.
you for being here.
And if you're enjoying What Are You Doing in Denmark, we have one more tiny favor. Please give our show a rating or review on whatever podcast platform you're using so that others will find us too. Thanks.